So my feeder's landed accurate, right exactly where I want it to be, where I'm building up that peg on the other bank. But the next step after having an accurate cast is actually sinking the line correctly. I'd say this is the most important factor after the accurate cast. And especially with monofilament on a kind of venue where I'm faced with today, on a commercial fishery, I'm fishing a feeder against that far bank. And more importantly, I'm actually fishing a method feeder. The principle is I do not want to move that feeder away from where it's hit the surface and hit the bottom, because I'm on that slope in the shallow water. That's the area of my peg I want to target for those carp. So the next process is sinking the line, and this is where a lot of people go wrong. Do not rush sinking the line. Now today I'm faced with actually a bit of a crosswind. Me personally, I want to leave the line sometimes on the surface for as long as possible, because that allows me to, once I've actually put the rod down and fishing with it, it allows me to read what indications and what fish are actually around my feeder or in my swim. The best way of thinking about it is if my line's on the surface, the only indications I'm getting is from where the line is underneath the water, which is generally around the feeder area. And that's a big advantage on calm days. It allows you to locate those fish really quickly and figure out actually what's going on in your swim. But like I've said today, I got a bit of a crosswind. So to prevent that feeder moving down that shelf from the tension on the line on the surface, I've got to sink it. So after that cast, what I then do is I close the bail arm, do not reel in. It's a big mistake what a lot of people do. They'll reel that slack line in, and trust me, you are moving that feeder down that shelf. So I've closed my bail arm. The next thing is I sit down and get nice and comfortable. Now you can actually see the line is very, very slack. That's exactly what I want, because I want minimal movement on my feeder. I've set the trap, the feeder's out there, all that bait's breaking down, the hook bait's coming free from the feeder. I'm actually fishing now as I'm talking. All a quiver tip for is an indicator. It's not going to hook the fish. The feeder and the hook and the principle of that fish sucking that bait in hooks the fish. That is the principle. Your quiver tip is an indicator. So in order to actually sink your line, all you do is, while the line is slack, you put your rod tip under the water, you grab your two fingers and you just allow a little bit of pressure onto your line. There's no rush sinking your line, because as I've explained, you're actually fishing while we're actually talking. The trap's set and a fish takes my bait, I will feel it now on my fingers. So in a way it's called touch ledgering. What a lot of people make a mistake of doing is they want to speed up that process, and they'll actually pull this line by actually pulling it towards them like so. Do not do that whatsoever, especially with a method feeder and mono. Just take your time. And once that line's sunk, like what it has now, just keep an eye on it. That's it, it's gone under the water now. You can see how slack that line is. I then put the rod on the rest, position the rod correctly, and then inch by inch, I want to turn that handle just a little bit to very, very gradually tighten up that slack line. Now what I want is a semi-slack line. So I want a very slight bend in my quiver tip, but not too much. If there's too much pressure on that quiver tip, it's going to allow too much tension against that feeder that's on a shelf and a slope, and it could possibly, quite easily, move that feeder down the shelf towards me, away from all that baits breaking down, completely defeating the object of what you're trying to achieve. So you can see there, my quiver tip is bent slightly. That allows me to read all those slight indications. I'd say what we call a build up to a bite. If you see those indications in your head, you think you could get a bite any minute. But it also allows you to tell what fish, and if there are any fish present in your peg feeding. But yet at the same time, it's bent enough for me to realise that if a fish then does come towards me, we'll get what we call a drop back bite, and the line will go slack. So there we go, we're all fishing, nice and efficient. But like what I said, just go through those rules when you're sinking your line. Do not rush sink that line. Take your time, and you'll end up with perfect presentation every single time.